The election is over, but the counting is not tonight, with every ballot in battleground Georgia set to be recounted by hand.
This will help build confidence.
Typically, recounts only change a race's margin by a few hundred votes or so it's very unlikely President Trump could overtake President-elect Biden's 14,000 vote lead in Georgia. But the Trump campaign today calls the recount a first step toward winning their legal fights, despite no evidence of widespread voter fraud. A different state has now been called in the president's favor.
NBC News has projected President Trump as the winner of the state of Alaska.
Alaska going red, not unexpected. What may be more surprising, Ivanka Trump on Twitter touting those results based on media projections relying on state data. Exactly the same projections that showed Joe Biden winning the presidency, a result her father so far refuses to accept. Now, NBC News has learned President Trump's advisors believe he will never concede, according to multiple people familiar with his thinking, with one predicting the president may eventually acknowledge the results, but not the accuracy of the count. Today, he made his first public appearance in nearly a week to honor the fallen at Arlington National Cemetery. Sources say he also met with aides about the post-election path forward. And while he may not be ready to move on yet, the rest of the world already has. Even the UK Prime Minister, a close ally, referring to him as the previous president today.
I had and have a good relationship with the previous president. I do not resolve from that. This is the duty of all British Prime Ministers to have a good relationship with the White House.
And tonight, we're learning two more people who attended that East Room election night party here last week have tested positive for the coronavirus, according to sources familiar with the diagnoses.
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.